There is an instinct that most people have, a sense of distance. You feel it around certain people who have recently undergone some tough times. Emotions like despair, anger, and sadness makes it too heavy to stand close to them for too long. Most of us, though, ignore that feeling. We tell ourselves that it's stress, or mood, or imagination. But in Buddhist culture, there's a quieter idea. That intense emotion don't simply disappear, especially when they're a product of sudden, violent, and unresolved trauma. And some believe that under right conditions, that weight doesn't stay contained and they manifest themselves into an entity. This is a story of a man who believes he encountered something that formed that way, and what happened when it followed him home. Welcome to Graveline. I'm Vivek, and I bring you stories of paranormal entities and phenomena that people have experienced in their lives. Stories that I hope will help you learn more about this world and the world beyond ours as well. Before we begin, I'd like you guys to please press that subscribe button, and thanks for the like. Also, if you want to help me keep the lights on, consider joining my Patreon. On to the story. Today's story is of Jim. Jim is from Idaho and was 22 years of age when this happened to him. I met him on Discord, and here's the conversation that we had. Some years ago, Jim worked with someone who carried an intensity that was difficult to explain. Even before anything tragic happened, being near them felt draining. He couldn't put a finger on it, but there was something heavy about them, a pressure that lingered. Jim kept his distance, socially and emotionally. Over time, he suspected that they noticed this distance and possibly resented it. Within the span of a single year, that coworker suffered two violent, devastating losses of close family members. Losses no one should ever endure, especially so close together. They had already struggled with depression, and after the second death, their emotional state collapsed completely. They took time off work. When they returned, it was immediately clear that they weren't ready. They entered the building already crying. By the time they reached their desk, they were sobbing uncontrollably, full-bodied, desperate wailing. The kind of grief that overwhelms the room and leaves everyone frozen, unsure of how to respond. Management gently asked them to go home and take more time. Even years later, Jim still feels unsettled thinking about that day. It was awful to witness someone suffering so completely. When the coworker returned weeks later, something was different. The grief was no longer raw. In its place was a void, a flat, bitter emptiness, as if someone had taken a vacuum cleaner and sucked out all the hope and joy out of her, leaving behind only anger, rage, and resentment, and something disturbingly hollow. Being near them felt aggressive in a way he couldn't articulate, like standing too close to something cold and sharp. Not long after that, something happened to Jim. One night he suddenly woke up from sleep, overwhelmed by terror without knowing why. The fear came before thought, the instinctive certainty that he wasn't alone. He turned toward the doorway. Standing there was a human body without a head. From the place where the head should have been, something poured outwards. Thick, roiling waves of emotion that Jim could somehow see. Anger and grief billowed from the neck like smoke, spilling into the room. The figure was shaking. Jim could hear it sobbing, deep, broken, gasping sobs, as if it were hyperventilating. Its hands were braced against the doorway, gripping the frame as though it needed support just to stand. Jim tried to scream, but no sound came out. The room appeared darker than it should have been, as if light itself was distorted. And as he stared, frozen, a realization settled in that made it even worse. The shape of the figure reminded him of his coworker. Not an exact likeness, no, close enough. More than appearance, it felt like the coworker, as if this thing was an extension of their grief and anger made physical. Through sheer force of will, Jim somehow made it leave. One moment it was there, the next it vanished. The lighting snapped back to normal. But it didn't end there. Jim felt as though something was in his apartment with him. He constantly felt watched. Goosebumps never left his skin. The hair at the base of his skull stood on end whenever he was home. Sleep became difficult. The discomfort was constant. Eventually, he decided he couldn't live like that. One evening, around 8 or 9 p.m., Jim sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the wall across from him, and then he did something I would never imagine myself doing. Never in a million years. He challenged that entity. Out loud, he said he was waiting, that whatever was there should show itself, and that he would make it leave. Almost immediately, an overwhelming heaviness pressed down on him. His eyelids grew impossibly heavy, forcing themselves shut. His torso tilted slightly, as though he were being pulled. The room went dark. A strange, black glow began emanating from the wall. Dark spots pulsed across its surface. Then, something began to emerge. A large creature pulled itself out of the wall, as if climbing through a portal. Its arms were long, its hands ended in claws, its teeth were large and unnatural. Only its upper torso emerged, dragging forward slowly, deliberately. Jim felt a powerful surge rise in his chest, a gathering force, as if he were drawing strength from somewhere deep inside him. He tried to shout, but his voice barely worked. What came out was a low, guttural growl. Get out, get out, get out. Each word felt forced by sheer will. The encounter lasted for less than 30 seconds, then everything returned to normal. The creature vanished. The wall was a wall again. The lighting snapped back to normal, and the room went silent. Whatever it was, it never returned. Years later, Jim was listening to a podcast describing something called a tulpa, an entity formed from intense emotional focus. The description unsettled him deeply, because what they were describing was exactly what he had faced. He didn't believe that his coworker had intended any harm. He didn't think they were even aware of what might have happened. But Jim couldn't shake the feeling that their grief, their anger, had needed somewhere to go. And it had found its target in him. Why? He doesn't know. It has been 2 decades since then. Jim never faced anything like this ever again. Sometimes all it takes for us to win against entities like these is just to stand up to them. And Jim did just that. He stood up to it. This was today's story. Do let me know in the comment section if you liked it or not. And as always, if you enjoyed the story, leave a like and a sub, and take care of your family and yourself. Till the next time.